Peace and blessings. Peace and blessings. Peace and blessings. Eternal rising. Eternal rising. Peace and blessings. Eternal rising. Eternal rising. Peace and blessings. Our Father, which art thou in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us of our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Hallelujah. Say loud. All right. Peace and blessings. All right. So, I'm going inside the Old Testament. Again, Genesis. We're going to try to walk through as much as we can possible. From the beginning to the end. Using Tanakh and using other sources outside the scripture that they try to deem pseudo, all right, to help with the testimony, okay? Now what we're doing is we're going inside of truth and reasoning. For those that don't understand, the main mission of a so-called Moses was to bring about a monotheistic God. Understanding, peace and blessings. Understanding a monotheistic God, because at that time, the world worshiped many gods. We're talking about the world worshiped many gods. And to understand this one God, is to understand creation. It's to understand his actions, okay? That's what this is about. None of these gods under the heavens, no idols can talk. As far as things that are made out of graven and wooden images and things like that, those things cannot talk. Those things cannot hear. Those things cannot build. Those things cannot get up and walk. Okay? They are lifeless. Okay? And other gods that people talk about that so-called may not be lifeless, all right? Or just a figure of people's imaginations as if they're dreaming. All right, let me tell you how disrespectful people are. Let me tell you exactly how disrespectful people are. God gave you 5 senses. All right, according to the scripture, the prophets had 6. The 6th sense would be foreknowledge, or what they call prescience. Okay? Foreknowledge or prescience. Not everybody has this, but the prophets had it. Okay? So, the disrespectful part about imagining other gods is the fact that you're using the very 5 senses that God gave you to create other gods. That's how disrespectful we've been. God gave you 5 senses. And we have used these 5 senses to create other gods in our heads. You grasp from your 5 senses to create or imagine, or what they call daydream. All right? These so-called figures that nobody has ever seen, nor have they ever made themselves known. Okay? So what we're going to do is to branch off from yesterday, proving that the world was made, all right? And if the world was not made, then the world is unbegotten. You see what I'm saying? If the world was not made, that means that the very world that we live in is the unbegotten one. I'm going to say it one more time. If the world was not made, then the world itself is the unbegotten one. So if you believe that the world was not made, then you believe that the world is the unbegotten one. If you believe that the world was made, then what we have to do is we have to take careful examination and walk through the steps and try to close every possible theory that there could only be one source and not many. So let's go into it. All right. So we're going to be in Genesis 1, and we're going to be in the Ebionite doctrine, which is the Clementine Recognitions. Okay. Here we go. It says Plato's testimony. But some would say that these things are done by nature. Now is this controversy is about a name. For while it is evident that it is a work of a mind and a reason. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? Stop right there. It is the work of a mind and a reason. Everything that we talked about yesterday in Genesis chapter 1, it has a reason for why it was created. So if everything has a reason for why it was created, it has to come from some type of source, and that source has to have a mind. That source has to have a mind. Everything that we see outside today in society has a reason. Just like how they say there is no such thing as, how they say there's a reason for everything. Yes, there is a reason for everything. There's a reason for everything that you do. So, upon reason, it must have a mind. The sun has a reason. The moon has a reason. The stars have a reason. The firmament has a reason. The birds of the air have a reason. Humans have a reason. Fish have a reason. Water has a reason. All these things have a reason. But what's the source? Whatever the source is, it has an intelligent mind. And it is not dumb at all. Here we go. So remember that. Mind and reason. Okay? What you call nature, I call God the creator. What you call nature, I call God the creator. Everything outside is nature. Genesis chapter 1 is about nature. Genesis chapter 1 is about the creation of nature. So that creation must have a creator. Nature has a reason. So their nature must come from some type of intelligent power of mind that man did not do. Science says a Big Bang theory. Science says a Big Bang theory. All right. So remember, mind and reason. What you call nature, we call God. It is evident that neither the species of bodies arranged with so necessary distinctions, nor the faculties of the mind, could or can be made by irrational and senseless work. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? Necessary distinctions, faculties of the mind cannot be made by irrational work. What does that mean again? Everything that we see outside cannot have been made by something irrational. Everything that is mentioned in Genesis chapter 1 cannot have been made by something irrational. It had to have been made by something rational. Reason and truth. Mind and reason. Necessary distinctions. Faculties of the mind. None of these things can be made by something irrational. None of these things could have been made by a Big Bang theory. Here we go. But if you regard the philosophers as fit witnesses, Plato testifies concerning these things in the Timaeus, where in the discussion, Timaeus, in the discussion on the making of the world, He asks whether it has existed always or had a beginning, and decides that it was made. For says he, it is the visible and palpable and corporal, but it is evident that all things which are of this sort have been made. But what has been made has doubtless an author. Anything that has been made has an author. Everything that was created has an author. Just like if you take a pen and draw a picture, if you take a pencil and draw a picture, if you take a pen and write a book, you are the author. Excuse me for a second. That's right. You are the author. So, the world was made by the handwriting of God. God is the author of nature. Nature is the handwriting of God. Nature was made by whom? Not man, not animals. But the true authorship, the true supreme deity. Here we go. But what has been made, Genesis chapter 1, has doubtless an author by whom it was made. This maker and father of all. However, it is difficult to discover. And when discovered, it is impossible to declare him to the vulgar. Such is the declaration of Plato. But though he and the other Greek philosophers had chosen to be silent about the making of the world, would it not be manifest to all who have any understanding? For what man is there, having even a particle of sense, who when he sees a house having all things necessary for useful purposes, its roof fashioned into the form of a globe, painted with various splendor and diverse figures, adorned with large and splendid lights, who is there, I say, that seeing such a structure would not immediately pronounce that it was constructed by a most wise and powerful artificer, artificer. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? Let's say that again. Okay, let's break that down. He's talking about our home that we live in, earth. He's talking about our home that we live in, which is earth. Okay? What does he say? For what man is there? What man is there? Having even a particle of sense, let's use our senses, who he sees a house, meaning the earth, having all things necessary. Having all things necessary. What all things necessary does this house have? Let's go to Genesis chapter 1. This house has heavens, a ceiling, a foundation. This house has lights. This house has waters. This house has seas. This house has rivers. This house has fishes. This house has fowls. This house has beasts, cattle, and all creeping things. This house has humans. So again, what particle of sense, okay? When he sees a house having things necessary for useful purposes, everything that God created has a reason and has a useful purpose. Everything that God created has a reason and has a useful purpose. All right? Everything God created has a reason and has a useful purpose. Okay? So, when he sees a house have all things necessary for useful purposes, its roof is fashioned, speaking about the heavens. And the roof is fashioned with what? The sun, the moon, the stars. The sun, the moon, the stars. The roof is fashioned into the form of a globe, painted with various splendor and diverse figures. The sun, the moon, the stars. Adorned with large and splendid lights. The sun, the moon, the stars. Who is there, I say, that seeing such a structure would not immediately pronounce that it was constructed by a most wise and powerful artificer? And so, who can be found foolish as when he gazes upon the fabric of the heaven, perceives the splendor of the sun and moon, sees the courses and beauty of the stars and their paths, assigned to them by fixed laws and periods. Did you hear that? Assigned to them by fixed laws and periods. That goes back to what I was talking about yesterday, Matthew 5:18. For earth will be destroyed, but not one jot or tittle shall disappear from the law. All things have a law. The sun has a law. The moon has a law. The stars have a law. Go back to that. When he gazes upon the fabric of the heavens, when he gazes upon the rooftop, he perceives the splendor of the sun and moon, sees the courses and beauty of the stars and their paths assigned to them by fixed laws and periods, would not cry out that these things are made, not so much by a wise and rational artificer, but by wisdom and reason itself. So again, when you gaze up into the heavens, how can one not say these things were made? Not by something that was not by something that was wise and rational, but by wisdom and reason itself. By wisdom and reason itself. So, the wisdom would be God. The wisdom would be God. When he said, let us make man in our image, speaking to his wisdom. When he said, let us make man in our image, he was not speaking to an angel. He was not speaking to some demigod. He was not speaking to Jesus. He was not speaking to there was nobody there but him and his wisdom, himself. So again, the world was made by wisdom and reason itself. So, what is the reason for the sun, the moon, and the stars? Let's look at Genesis 1. Verses 14, it says, God said, let there be luminaries in the firmament of the heavens, separate between the day and the night. So God, wisdom, the reason for the sun and the moon was to separate the day and the night. Here we go. And they shall serve as signs. So they shall serve as signs. And for festivals. And for days and for years. And for days and for years. And for days and for years. The sun and the moon was to separate between light and darkness. They were placed for signs. This is where time comes into play. And again, for days and for years, the Most High is an infinite light. There is no darkness with him. The Most High is an infinite light. There is no darkness with him. Here we go. But if you would rather have the opinion of the other Greeks, if you would rather have the other opinion of the other Greek philosophers, and you are acquainted with mechanical science, you are of course familiar with that, with what is their deliverance concerning the heavens. For they suppose a sphere equally rounded in every direction, and looking indifferently to all points, and at all distances in all directions from the center of the earth, and so stable by its own symmetry, that is perfect equality, does not permit it to fall off to any side. And so the sphere is sustained, although supported by no prop. Now, if the fabric of the world really has this form, the divine work is evident in it. But if, as others think, the sphere is placed upon the waters and is supported by them or floating in them, even so the work of a great contriver is shown in it. Here we go. Motion of the stars. Motion of the stars. We get into truth and we get into reasoning. Motion of the stars. But lest the assertion may seem doubtful, respecting things which are not manifest to all. Did you hear that? Respecting things which are not manifest to all. The sun, the moon, the stars is manifest to all. The sun, the moon, the stars is manifest to all. Seas, rivers, lakes, banks is manifest to all. Mankind is manifest to all. Plant life is manifest to all. Animal life is manifest to all. Sea life is manifest to all. Wind is manifest to all. Breath is manifest to all who has life. So again, lest anybody seem doubtful, respecting things which are not manifest to all. That's the problem we have in this world today. We try to use God's 5 senses and create doctrines that are not manifest to all. God's handwriting is nature. Nature is a doctrine within itself. And this doctrine of nature is manifest unto all. Here we go. Let us come to those things of which nobody is ignorant. Let us come to those things in which nobody is ignorant. Let us come to those things in which nobody is ignorant. Let's find out what we're talking about. Who disposed the courses of the stars with so great reason. With so great reason. All right? With so great reason. All right? Here we go. Remember, we're talking about truth and reasoning. Ordained their rising and setting, and appointed to each one to accomplish the circuit of the heavens in a certain and regular time. Motion of the stars. Who assigned to some to be always approaching to the setting, and others to be returning to the rising. Who put a measure upon the courses of the sun, and days, and months, and changes, and of seasons, that he might distinguish by the sure measurement of the course. Now winter, then spring, then summer, then afterwards autumn. And always by the same changes of the year, complete the circle with variety, without confusion. Who I say will not pronounce that the director of such order is the very wisdom of God. Here we go again. Remember, we're speaking about wisdom and reason itself. Wisdom and reason itself. One more time. Who assigned to some to be always approaching to the setting, and assigned to some to be always approaching to the setting, and others to be returning to the rising. Who put a measure upon the courses of the sun, that he might mark out by his diverse motions, hours and days. That goes back to Genesis chapter 1 and 14, through verses 16. That he might mark out by his diverse motions, hours, days, and months, and changes of seasons. Wisdom and reason itself. That he might distinguish by the sure measurement of the course, now winter, then spring, then summer, afterwards autumn, and always by the same changes of the year, complete the circle with variety, without confusion. Who I say will not pronounce that the director of such order is the very wisdom of God. And these things we have spoken according to the relations given us by the Greeks respecting the science of heavenly bodies, the providence of earthly things. Here we go. We in Genesis 1. We just breaking Genesis chapter 1 down through the Ebionites and its scenes. Here we go. But what of those things also which we see on the earth, or in the sea? Or we not plainly taught that not only the work, but also the providence of God is in them? For where is, there are on earth lofty mountains in certain places. The object of this is that the air being compressed. Here we go. We're going to show proof, the reason for mountains. Some intelligent mind had a reason for mountains. We all can plainly see that there are mountains. This is a witness unto all. This is a witness unto all. What is the reason for the mountains? Let's see. In certain places, the object of this is this: that the air being compressed and confined by them. So mountains help compress the air. Though the appointment of God may be forced and pressed out into the winds, by which fruits may germinate. So the mountains help compress the air so that fruits can germinate. The mountains help compress the air. The mountains help compress the air so that fruits can germinate. I'm going to say it one more time. The mountains help compress the air so that your fruits can germinate. That is the reason for mountains. Your wisdom did not create this, but some type of supernatural higher intelligence of mind knew this and created mountains so that it can help the air compress against your food, against your herbs, against your fruit, so they can germinate. Here we go. And the summer heat may be moderate, when the Pleiades glow, fired with the blaze of the sun. But you still say, why that blaze of the sun, that moderating should be required? How then should fruits be ripened, which are necessary for the uses of men? But observe this also, that at the meridian axis, where the heat is greatest, there is no great collection of clouds, nor an abundant fall of rain, lest disease should be produced among the inhabitants. Watery clouds, if they are acted on by rapid heat, render the air impure, and the earth, also receiving the warm rain, does not afford nourishment to the crops, but destruction. In this, who can doubt that there is the working of divine providence? The working of divine providence. The sun, the moon, the stars, the seas, the mountains, the air, the plant life, the sun, its glazing hot fire, the rain, its dew. All of these things were done by divine providence. In short, Egypt, which is scorched with the heat of Ethiopia, in its neighborhood, lest its air should be incurably vitiated by the effects of showers. Its plains do not receive rain furnished to them from the clouds, but is, as it were, an earthly shower from the overflow of the Nile. What shall we say of fountains and rivers? What shall we say of fountains and rivers, which flow with perpetual motion into the sea, and by divine providence, neither does their abundant supply fail? You have never seen a shortage on water. You have never seen a shortage of water. Rivers never fail. Seas never fail. Lakes never fail. They are forever flowing. There is no shortage. This has to be done by some type of divine providence. This has to be done by some type of divine providence. The fact that rivers continue flowing, seas continue flowing, lakes continue flowing, never ceasing, never failing. This has to be done by some type of divine providence. Here we go. Neither does their abundant supply fail. Neither does their abundant supply fail. Nor does the sea, though it receives so great quantities of water, experience any increase. But both those elements which contribute to it and those which are contributed remain in the same proportion. Again, let's read that again. Though the sea receives great quantities of water, it never experiences an increase. But both those elements which contribute to it and those which are thus contributed remain in the same proportion. But you will say to me, the salt water naturally consumes the fresh water, which is poured into it. Well, in this is manifest the work of providence, that it made that element salt, into which it turned the courses of all that water which it had provided for the use of men, so that through so great spaces of time, the channel of the sea, or the channel of the sea, has not been filled, and produce a deluge destructive to the earth and to men. Nor would anyone be so foolish as to think that this so great reason and so great providence has been arranged by irrational nature. Let me break that down again. But by those elements which contribute to it, and those which are thus contributed remain in the same proportion. So let me give you an example. When you see the waterfalls continually. The water is continuously dropping. There is never an overflow. There is never an underflow, but constantly remain in its proportion. Constantly remains in its proportion. If the earth if it didn't remain in its proportion, we all would be flooded out. How is the earth able to constantly keep water in its constant state without an overflow of the earth and killing the inhabitants of the land? How is this possible? How are we able to continuously see water flow without unaliving the inhabitants of the earth on a day-to-day basis? How? Here we go. But you would say to me, the salt water naturally consumes the fresh water, which is poured into it. Well, in this is manifest the work of providence, that it made the element salt, into which it turned the course of all the waters, which it had provided for the use of men. What is water for? The use of men. It is for the use of men. Water is not for God. God does not get thirsty. God does not get hungry. Everything that was put here on this earth was for the use of men, and also the use of animals. God does not need anything. He does not hunger. He does not thirst. This separates us from him. All right, here we go. So that through great spaces of time, the channel of the sea has not been filled, and produce a deluge destructive to the earth and to men. Nor will anyone so foolish as to think that this is so great reason and so great providence has it been arranged by irrational nature. Because we got to understand, what is irrational must stay irrational. So if this was done by irrational nature, we will witness floods on a constant basis. We will witness irrational behavior on a constant basis from nature. What's irrational cannot bring forth the rational, and what's rational cannot bring forth what is irrational. It's either one or the other. So what we can see plainly outside is rational, and something irrational could not have created what is rational. Here we go. Plants and animals. But what shall I say of the plants, and what of animals? Is it not providence that has ordained that plants? Is it not God that has ordained those plants? Let's go to Genesis chapter 1, verses 11. God said, let the earth sprout vegetation, herbage yielding seed, fruit trees yielding fruit, each after its kind, containing its own seed on the earth. And it was so. And the earth brought forth vegetation, herbage yielding seed after its kind, and the trees yielding fruit, each containing its seed in its kind. And God saw that it was good. Plants and animals. But what shall I say of the plants, and what of the animals? Is it not providence that has ordained that plants, when they decay by old age, should be reproduced by the suckers or the seeds which they have themselves produced, and animals by propagation, and by a certain wonderful dispensation of providence, by a certain wonderful dispensation of providence. Milk is prepared in the udders of the dams for the animals before they are born, and as soon as they are born, with no one to guide them, they seek out the store of nourishment provided for them. They seek out the store of nourishment provided for them. Okay? And you can actually see this in scripture. Let me get there real fast. You can see that in scripture. 104. 104. Okay. So we're going to second witness that with Psalms 104, verse 27, and we're going to do the verses 9 right quick. So let me head over to Psalms. Okay. Let's head over to Psalms. You know, this Psalms got 1,000 chapters. Here we are. We know that Psalms got 1,000 chapters. So we'll start at verse 9. All right. We'll start at verse 9. You set a boundary they cannot overstep. They cannot return to cover the earth. He sends the springs into the streams. They flow between the mountains. They water every beast of the field. They quench the wild creatures and thirst. Near them dwell the heavens birds. From amongst the branches they give forth song. He waters the mountains from his upper chambers. From the fruit of your work, the earth is sated. Did you hear that? From the fruit of your work, the earth is sated. He causes vegetation. He causes vegetation to sprout for the animal, and plants through man's labor to bring forth bread from the earth. To bring forth bread from the earth. Psalms 104:14. From the fruit of your works, the earth is sated. He causes vegetation to sprout for the animal, and plants through man's labor to bring forth bread from the earth. Psalms 104, verses 14. And I believe it led me down also to verses 27. Here it is. Psalms 104 and 27. All of them look to you with hope to provide their food in its proper time. All of them look to you with hope to provide their food in proper time. Here we go. And as soon as they are born with no guide to them, they seek out the store of nourishments provided for them. And not only males are produced, but females also. But it should seem as something to be done by a certain order of nature, the Big Bang, and not by the appointed of the Creator. He has as a proof and an indication of his providence. He has as a proof an indication of his providence. So if you believe in a Big Bang theory, there has been proof an indication that has been left behind to show that this whole realm that we live in is subdued and under the natural empowerment of a providence, whom we call God. Again, if you believe in a Big Bang theory, God himself has left something behind to show that your course of theory may not be true. Let's keep on. He has, as a proof, an indication of his providence, ordained a few animals to preserve their stock on the earth in an exceptional way. For example, the crow conceives through the mouth. The crow conceives through the mouth. The weasel brings forth through their ear. And some birds, such as hens, sometimes produce eggs conceived of wind or dust. Conceived of wind and dust. Other animals convert the male into the female and change their sex every year, as hares and hyenas, which they call monsters. Others spring from the earth and get their bodies from it, as moles. Others from ashes, as vipers. Others from petrifying flesh, as wasps from horse flesh. Bees from ox flesh. Others from cow dung, as beetles. Others from herbs, as the scorpion from the basil. And again, herbs from animals, as parsley and asparagus from the horn of the stag, of the she-goat. Germination of seeds. Germination of seeds. And what occasion is there to mention more instances in which divine providence has ordained the production of animals to be effected in various ways? That order being superseded, which is thought to be assigned by nature, there has been an order. There has been a divine order. There has been a divine order in which people think something irrational can create rational. Order is rational. Irrational cannot create order. Order is rational. The Big Bang theory is an irrational theory. We're speaking about rational matters. We're speaking about things that came with order. Everything has an order. And when it goes out of order, we suffer the curses of the law. Let me say that again. When we obey the order, we receive blessings. When we disobey the order, we receive curses. And these orders were to show the divine providence and wisdom behind the reasoning. Let's keep going. From which not so again, I'm going to read that over. And what occasion is there to mention more instances in which divine providence has ordained the production of animals to be effected in various ways, that order being superseded, which is thought to be assigned by nature, from which not irrational course of things, but one arranged by his own reason. All these things were arranged by God's own reason, might be events. And this is also, is there not a full work of providence shown? Is there not a full work of providence shown? When the seeds are sown or prepared by means of earth and water, when the seeds that are sown, we're speaking about order. Irrational cannot create rational. Irrational cannot create order. What's out of order must stay out of order. What's out of order must stay out of order. Okay? So we're speaking about order. The order of what? The germination of seeds. What is the order to it? Here we go. By this providence, okay? When the seeds are sown, they are prepared by means of earth and water. You plant the seed, you water the seed. That's order. That cannot be done by irrationality. For the sustenance of men. This is done for your substance, to suffice you. Reason and order, rational. Here we go. But when these seeds are committed to the earth, the soil milks upon the seed as from its tits, like women. Teats. From its teats, what we call titties. Here we go. Mother Earth. The moisture which is received into itself by the will of God. For there is in water a certain power. For there is in water a certain power of the Spirit given by God from the beginning. Water grows your plants to help substantiate you, to help suffice you. Water, we humans need water in order for us to quench our thirst, but also it helps us grow. Every child is like a plant. We all must be watered. If we do not receive no type of water, we die off. Plants need water, humans need water, animals need water. And when we consume this element, it helps us grow. When we consume the element of water, it helps us grow. Why? Because there is a certain spirit in water from God since the beginning. There was a spirit in water. How do we know this? Because it helps plants grow. It quenches our thirst. It helps us grow. This planet would be nothing without water. Here we go. For there is in water a certain power of the Spirit given by God from the beginning, by whose operation the structure of the body, that is, to begin to be formed in the seed itself, and to be developed by means of blade and the ear, for the grain of the seed being swelled by the moisture. That power of the Spirit which has been made to reside in the water, running as an incorporeal substance through certain straight passages of veins, excites the seeds to growth. This is order. This was done by divine providence. This could not have been done by some irrational nature of Big Bang theory. Again, let's run down the wisdom behind the reasoning. The reasoning for seeds is to substantiate, is to subsist, is to help suffice mankind. Here we go. I got to read that again. For there is in water a certain power of the Spirit given by God from the beginning. Now, when we go back to Genesis chapter 1, it says this. It says this in Genesis chapter 1. Let's read it. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. When the earth was astonishingly empty, with darkness upon the face of the deep, and the divine presence hovered upon the surface of the water. The divine presence hovered upon the surface of the water. Till this day, water has the very divine presence of the Most High God. And without water, there is no life. Without God, there is no life. Here we go. There was a certain power in water, in the spirit of water, given by God from the beginning, by whose operation the structure of the body, that is to begin to be formed in the seed itself, and to be developed by means of the blade in the ear. For the grain of the seed being swelled by the moisture, order. That power of the spirit which has been made to reside in the water, running as an incorporeal substance through the straight passage of the vein, order. Excites the seeds to grow, order. And forms the species of the growing plants, order. That was not done by a Big Bang theory, but that was done by order, wisdom, divine providence, reasoning, and mind. Here we go. By means, therefore, of the moist elements in which that vital spirit is contained and inborn, it is caused that not only it is revived, but also that it in appearance and form in all respects like the seed that had been sown to reproduce. Order. Let me say that again. By means, therefore, of the moist element in which that vital spirit is contained and inborn, that moist element, that the Spirit of God is within. It is contained and inborn. It is caused that not only is it revived, but also that in appearance and form in all respects like to the seed that it had been sown is reproduced. So, not only when you water this plant, it stays revived, but also so that it can also continuously to reproduce. So it can continuously reproduce. There is an order. You keep it planted, it drops more seeds. You gather those seeds, you plant those seeds, you water those seeds, and there's a continuous operation. This is what you call order. What is irrational cannot create what is rational. Again, what is out of order cannot create what is in order. What is out of order must stay out of order. And what is in order must continuously stay in order. And this shows the divine providence of God, which is order, not a Big Bang theory. Here we go. To reproduce. Now, who that has even a particle of sense would think that this method depends upon irrational nature? Which one of y'all think this just happened? Who think that this happened because of some Big Bang theory? Who think that this happened because of some irrational nature? Who think that other gods created this when all these gods war with each other? What is in unity with itself cannot war with itself. Is you hearing me? Let's continue. Lastly, also, these things are done in a resemblance of the birth of man. Did you hear that? The same way plant life is set up is the same way human life is set up. We need water to revive ourselves. We need water to live. And we also reproduce. As long as we stay what? Hydrated. As long as we stay what? Hydrated. Without water, all life is lifeless. We share the same order as plants. Here we go. Lastly, also, these things are done in resemblance of the birth of men. For the earth seems to take the place of the womb. into which the seed being east is both formed and nourished by the power of water and spirit, as we have said above. Now we get into the power of water. Please share the live. This is very important. The power of water. But in this also, the divine providence is to be admired, that it permits us to see and know the things that are made. Again, that divine providence wants us to see and to know that things are made. I was made. You were made. Plants were made. Animals were made. Seas were made. Everything in Genesis chapter 1 was made. And so, it was not afforded for you to call yourself a God, but to give thanks to the one and only bestower of all things, but to give thanks to the giver of life. Everything you see around us was not for us to take upon ourselves and call ourselves gods or call someone else God, but it was for us to recognize the one true providence. It was for us to recognize the one true divine power. It was for us to recognize its true wisdom, in whom none is like. I'm going to say it again. We have used the very given five senses that God have given us to create other gods. How disrespectful. How disrespectful. Here we go. You're daydreaming now. The power of water. But in this also, the divine providence is to be admired. Is to be admired. The divine providence is to be admired. Not for you to be admired. Not for you to admire other animals. It was for the divine providence to be admired. Not for you to call yourself God, again, or to call somebody else God. Everything around us in creation was to be admired so we can recognize whom God really is. God is order. God is wisdom. God is rational. Here we go. That it permits us to see and know the things that are made, but has placed in secrecy and concealment the way and manner in which they are done. So that's a mystery. Only thing you're supposed to be concerned about is that these things were made. So it must have an artificer. It must have a creator. Okay? But the mystery is placed in secrecy and concealment, the way and manner in which they are done, that they may not be competent to the knowledge of the unworthy, but may be laid open to the worthy and faithful. This information is only made for the worthy and the faithful. You won't find this type of teaching barely nowhere else on the internet, because it was hidden for a reason. Now it goes back to why Christ kept saying, you are blind. Because the divine providence in his reasoning has been in front of us the whole time. His righteousness has been in front of us his whole time. How we acknowledge him has been in front of us this whole time. It's a different type of teaching. Here we go. This knowledge is for the worthy and the faithful, when they shall have deserved it. When they shall have deserved it. I didn't know this at one point in time. I was blind. All praises. I deserve it now. And to anybody else who was able to receive this message, many blessings to you, because you deserve it. You're hearing this for a reason. Nothing can defeat order, and order is God. And when they shall have deserved it, but to prove by facts and examples that nothing is imported to seeds of the substance of the earth, but all depends upon the element of water. Didn't I say that earlier? All depends on the element of water. All depends on the element of water. Genesis chapter 1, verses 2. The divine presence hovered on the surface of the water. The divine presence hovered on the surface of the water. This is why baptism was so important with the Essenes, because they understood the importance and the empowerment of water, because it upheld the power and presence and divine presence of the Most High. Here we go. But all depends upon the element of water and the power of the Spirit which is in it. The Spirit of God is within water. Suppose, for example, that 100 talents weigh of earth are placed in a very large trough, and there are sown in it several kinds of seeds, either of herbs or shrubs, and that water enough is supplied for watering them, and that care is taken for several years, and that seeds which are gathered are stored up. For example, of corn or barley and other sorts, separately from year to year, until the seeds of each sort amount to 100 talents weight. Then also let the stalks be pulled up by the roots and weighed. And after all these have been taken from the troughs, let the earth be weighed. It will still give back it 100 talents. Weight undiminished. Whence then shall we say that all that weight and all the quantity of different seeds and stalks has come? Does it not appear manifestly that it has come from the water? For the earth retains entire what is its own, but the water which has been poured and all through is now nowhere on account of the powerful virtue of the divine condition. Let me say it again. Does it not appear manifest that it has come from the water? For the earth remains entire what is its own, but the water which has been poured in all through is nowhere, on account of the powerful virtue of the divine condition, which by one species of water both prepares the substance of so many seeds and shrubs, and forms their species, and preserves the kind while multiplying the increase. Without water, none of us can multiply. Not even plant life. None of us can be revived. There was a certain spirit inside of water. All right? There was a certain spirit inside of water that allows growth and reproduce and to revive. I'm going to say the two R's. Reviving and reproducing. That's what water is good for. Reviving and reproducing. Reviving and reproducing. And this element is needed by all. All need the element of water. Okay? This is one of my favorite ones. The human body. Let's get deep now. Everything we're speaking about is in Genesis chapter 1. But we're speaking about truth, reasoning, and mind. How everything has an order. How everything comes from a divine presence. The beginning. The true artificer. Alright? Here we go. The human body. From all these things, I think it is sufficiently and abundantly evident that all things are produced. And the universe consists by a designing sense and not by the irrational operation of nature, a Big Bang theory. But let us come now, if you please, to our own substance. That is the substance of man, who is a small world, a micronism, in the great world. And let us consider with what reason it is compounded. And from this especially, you will understand the wisdom of the Creator. Everything that I have mentioned since I started the live is to help you understand the wisdom of the Creator, not to help you understand yourself, not for you to call yourself a God, but for you to acknowledge God, and to you and for you to what does it say? Understand the wisdom of God. For you to acknowledge God and for you to understand the wisdom of God. Why? Because you yourself are not God. You can't do none of these things that I mentioned. You didn't put none of this into place. Because before you, there was a before you. Before you, there was a before you. And since we can see that all things are created, once again, it must have a creator. And since we see that all things have an order, it must have been made by someone who is rational, who is of order, okay? Who has reasoning, who has a mind, that of a divine providence, okay? And from this, you will understand the wisdom of the Creator. For although man consists of different substances, one mortal and the other immortal, yet by the skillful contrivance of the Creator, their diversity does not prevent their union, and that although the substance be diverse and alien, the one from the other, for the one is taken from the earth and formed by the Creator, but the other is given from immortal substance. And yet the honor of its immortality is not violated by this union. Nor does it, as some think, consist of reason and conspicuance in passion, but rather such affections seem to be in it, by which it may be moved in each of these directions. For the body, which consists of bones and flesh, takes its beginning from the seed of man. Did you hear that? For the body, which consists of bones and flesh, takes its beginning from the seed of man, which is extracted from the marrow by warmth and conveyed into the womb as into a soil. This goes back to what we talk about, how man operates like plants. Okay? This is to help you understand your Creator and his wisdom. Here we go. To which it adheres and is gradually moistened from the bones and is formed into the likeness of him who injected the seed. Just like no plant cannot create another plant outside itself. Whatever that plant is, when it reproduces, it's going to be that plant. The next plant will be the image of the previous plant. Just like how mankind reproduces. Once I inject the seed in the woman, I reproduce, and that child is the image of the one who injected the seed. A marijuana plant is nothing but the image of another marijuana plant before it. A fig tree is nothing but the image of a fig tree before it. All things reproduce, all things revive. Through what? The element of water. Here we go. Symmetry of the body. And marking this the work of the designer, how he has inserted the bones like pillars on which the flesh might be sustained and carried. That's order. That is order. Let me help you understand the wisdom of your God. Your designer inserted bones inside of your flesh, inside of your skin, like pillars, in which so that your flesh might be sustained and carried. That's the reason for your bones. That's the reason for order. I'm here to help you understand the wisdom of your God. What other God has done this? Here we go. Then again, how an equal measure is preserved on either side. That is the right and the left. So that the foot answers the foot, the hand to hand. The foot answers the foot, the hand to hand. Even the finger to the finger. Even the finger to the finger. Here we go. So that each agrees in perfect equality with each other. This could not have been done by something irrational and out of order. This was done by something that has order. Here we go. But also are formed fit for necessary uses. The hands, for instance, are so made as to be fit for work. That's why your hands were made, for fit for work, to labor, and other things. The feet for walking. The eyes protected with the sentinel eyebrows to serve the purpose of the sight. The ears so formed for hearing, that like a cymbal, they vibrate the sound of the word that falls upon them, and send it inward, and transmit it even in the understanding of the heart. Whereas the tongue, striking against the teeth and speaking, performs the part of a fiddle bow. The teeth also form, some for cutting and dividing the food, handing it over to the inner ones, and these, in their turn, bruise and grind it like a meal, that it may be more conveniently digested when it is conveyed into the stomach, whence also they are called grinders. That man gave you ears. Let me break that down again. Let me break that down. We're speaking about truth, and we're speaking about reasoning. Truth and reasoning. Nothing that I said is not a witness to all. Anybody who can comprehend, anybody that is over the age of 18, I'm not even going to say over the age of 18. I'm going to just say anybody that is just able to understand and see the simple. I just named the simple. Everything I named is a witness to all. Hand in hand, foot in foot, ear in ear, fingers in fingers. It's a witness to all. Your hands was made to labor. Your ears were made to hear. Here we go. I got to break that down again. That was fire. That was fire. The hands, for the instance, are made fit for work, truth and reason. The feet for walking, truth in reasoning. The eyes protected by the sentinel eyebrows to serve the purpose of sight, truth and reasoning. The ears are formed for hearing, truth and reasoning, that like a cymbal, they vibrate the sound of the word that falls upon them and send it inward, truth and reasoning, and transmit it even in the understanding of the heart. Truth and reasoning performs the part of a fiddle bow. The teeth also are formed, some for cutting and dividing food, truth and reasoning, handing it over to the inner ones, and these in their turn bruise and grind it like a meal, that it may be more conveniently digested when it is conveyed into the stomach, whence also they are called grinders. We all know that we eat these teeth, these grinders. We bite down and we chew. Why? He gave us these teeth so that when we bite down on our food, it is easily digested. Who do you know just goes and orders some food and swallow their food whole without biting it? He gave you teeth so you can break down your food in the smallest increments so you can digest it easy. Here we go. Breath and blood. The nostrils are also made for the purpose of collecting, inspiring, and expiring air. Truth and reasoning. Nostrils were for the purpose of collecting, for inhaling and exhaling air. For inhaling and exhaling air. That's a law. Not one jot or tittle shall disappear from the law. Here we go. That by the renewal of the breath, the natural heat which is in the heart may by means of the lungs be either warmed or cooled, as the occasion may acquire. While the lungs are made to abide in the breast, thereby their softness, they may soothe and cherish the vigor of the heart, in which the life seems to abide, the life. I say not the soul. And what shall I say of the substance of the blood, which proceeding as a river from a fountain, and first born along in the one Chanel, and then spreading through the innumerable veins, as through canals, irrigates the whole territory of the human body, with vital streams being supplied by the agency of the liver, which is placed in the right side for effecting the digestion of the food and turning it into blood. But in the left side is placed the spleen, which draws to itself and in some way cleanses the impurities of the blood. That's what your spleen is for. Your spleen, which draws to itself and in some way cleanses the impurities of the blood. What is food for? Food. What is food for? Food turns into blood. Food turns into blood. How do we know this? Think about it. When you eat animals, over a period of time, you get what? High blood pressure. The food is in your blood. The food has turned into blood. Now, you suffer high blood pressure. I have never heard anyone who lives off fruits and herbs suffer high blood pressure. Your food turns into blood. Your food turns into blood. By law. That's what my uncle say. The intestines. The intestines. What reason also is employed in the intestines, which are arranged in long circular windings, that they may gradually carry off the refuse of food, so as neither to render places suddenly empty, and so as not to be hindered by the food that is taken afterwards. But they are made like a membrane, that the parts that are made outside of them or gradually receive moisture, which if it were poured out suddenly would empty the internal parts, and not hindered by a thick skin, which would render the outside dry, and disturb the whole fabric of man with distressing thirst. Did you hear that? Your intestines were made to lay waste. Your intestines were made to get rid of food. That's order. That could not have been done by something irrational. If something irrational made that, I'm pretty sure we wouldn't be releasing nature. We'd just be filled up, ready to overload and blow up. Pretty sure we would die from overly eating. It wouldn't be considered overly eating. Why? Because we just won't be able to do nothing about it. It's just that no matter what we eat, at some point, we would have to die because we don't release it out. Divine order says, eat, drink, soften the food within the inside, it releases the nature. This is what the intestines help do. Something out of order, something that it was irrational, would not have done this. Irrational does not bring order. Rational brings order. All right? Okay. Generation. Moreover, the female form, the cavity of the womb, most suitable for receiving. The womb receives. The woman is the receiver. The male is the giver. And cherishing and vivifying the germ. Who does not believe that it has been made as it is by reason and foresight? Huh? Everything that was made was by reason and foresight. This was thoroughly planned out. This was thoroughly thought out. It was made by reason and foresight. Because in that part alone of her body, the female differs from the male. We know this. Let's find out how. In which the fetus being placed is kept and cherished. And again, the male differs from the female. Only in that part of his body in which is the power of injecting seed. No woman can inject seed inside of a man. No woman can inject seed inside of another woman. Huh? By law, man is supposed to inject seed inside of woman to help with the continuation of mankind. Order. If there was no order, it'd be an orgy. I'm going to just say that. It'd be a cesspool. Women to be getting women pregnant. Men to be getting men pregnant. Men to be getting animals pregnant. Women to be getting animals pregnant. Animals to be getting men pregnant. Animals to be getting women pregnant. Everything would just be out of order. Everything would just be out of order. It'd just be a free play. It'd be just do as you please. What is order is concerned only with order. And anything that is out of order must suffer its consequence. Here we go. Which is the power of injecting seed and propagating mankind. And in this, there was a great proof of providence from the necessary difference of members, but more in this, where under a likeness of form, there was found to be diversity of use and variety of office. For males and females equally have titties or tits, but only those of the female are filled with milk. A male's breast cannot be filled with milk. Only the females can. Just like a female cannot inject seed inside of a man. That is for the man to do to the woman. Order. Order in the courtroom. Order in the court. Everything has order. That as soon as they have brought forth the infant, they may find nourishment suited for them. But if we see the member in man arranged with such method, that in all the rest there is seen to be similarity of form, and a difference only in those in which their use requires a difference. There's only a difference between man and woman in as much. Let me say that again. The only difference between man and woman, all right, is the difference only in those in which their use requires a difference. That's the only difference. I'm going to say it again. The difference between man and woman is only in those in which their uses requires a difference. Only time there is a difference between man and woman is when it is required for man and woman in their uses to be different. So, for example, a man is to inject seed in woman, and it is for her to impregnate. It is not for woman to inject seed in man so he can impregnate. No. I give the seed, you receive the seed. A giver and a receiver is two different things. So when it comes to the uses of office, this is what makes us different. Yes, we are all equal under God, but when it comes to the uses of office, we are different. You have titties that produce milk when you are pregnant. I cannot produce milk from my tits. You see what I'm saying? We are all equal under God, but we are different when it comes to the use of offices. When it comes to the use of offices. I don't breastfeed babies. That's your job. The difference in offices. And a difference only in those in which their use requires a difference. And we neither see anything superfluous nor anything wanting in man, nor in woman anything deficient or in excess, who would not from all these things acknowledge the operation of reason and the wisdom of the Creator. Everything that I mentioned in the live, I will ask you, who will not acknowledge the operation of reason and the wisdom of the Creator? Peace and blessings.